Hi, and welcome to my presentation for the Health Data Research Network Canada National Training Program in Pragmatic Trials. This was my postdoc project that I worked with Dr. Amit Garg back in 2017 to 2019, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity to share it again with you all. So there are more than 4,000 Canadians on the wait list for a transplant. There are numerous benefits to organ donation. A single donor can give the precious gift of life to many people. One donor can save as many as 8 lives and improve the quality of life for up to 75 individuals. Furthermore, transplantation success rates are excellent. After receiving a transplant recipients are able to enjoy an excellent quality of life and are able to work, attend school, travel, and play sports. Benefits of organ donation extends beyond the transplant recipients. For example, bereaving families who consent to organ donation derive emotional benefits from saving a life. One family member even noted that to know that he was able to save not just one life, but 5 lives helps. So one strategy used to promote organ donation in many nations is the use of organ donor registries. These registries record an individual's preference regarding organ donation after death. The main purpose of these registries is to help families with deciding whether to proceed with organ donation during an intense time of grief. However, the main problem is that while a majority of Canadians support organ donation, less than 35% have actually registered a commitment to do so. And interestingly enough, this statistic is about the same in 2024. So to set the scene as I prepare to talk about this project, I would like to ask if this image looks familiar to anyone. In Ontario and many places in the US, people primarily register for organ and tissue donation through the DMV. While this still represents an important place to get people to register, it is not always the best for everyone. Some people just want to get their driver's license and get out as soon as possible, so thinking about organ donation is the last thing on their mind. Furthermore, many DMV workers lack the experience or expertise to answer any organ donation related question. One study showed that negative emotions at the DMV can actually cause a decrease in registration intention, and this negative emotion can have a lasting effect. So, in collaboration with Ontario's organ procurement organization, Trillium Gift of Life Network, we decided to test a new approach to boost organ donor registration in family physician offices. They were initially planning a large-scale initiative across the province, but we thought it would be wise to start small, testing the waters with a few offices before expanding. So why focus on family physician offices? Well, there are a few key reasons. So around 77% of Canadians see their family doctors at least once a year, which is much more frequent than the every 5-year visit to renew a driver's license. This gives us regular, meaningful contact. Reception staff are routinely checking OHIP cards where donor status is clearly printed. This creates a natural opportunity to encourage registration or verify someone's status. Many patients trust their family doctors for important information, so this setting is ideal for promoting organ donation, and family doctors believe it is within their scope of practice. One systematic review showed that 8 out of 9 studies increased donor registration, and while patients are waiting for their appointments, they have a few minutes to spare, which we believed was a perfect window to register for organ and tissue donation. So overall, we believe that by using the waiting room, we can help make the process easy and convenient for both the patients and the physicians. So taking into account the problem and the potential of family physician office, we created RegisterNow-1, which was our first trial aimed to increase organ and tissue donor registration in family physician offices. So before I dive into it, I want to briefly discuss how we came about developing the intervention. We used a fairly thorough process. We first did semi-structured interviews with patients to identify barriers enablers to donor registration. Our semi-structured interview was guided by the theoretical domains framework, which synthesized a range of psychological theory and constructs applicable to behavior change. Some of these constructs include knowledge, emotion, memory, and social influences. So overall, all of our interviewees were supportive of organ and tissue donation, but about half had not registered yet. So, for example, for our interviews, it was revealed that they didn't know the first thing of how to register, or they think they say sign your driver's license which is not true, by the way. In Ontario, your registration is in your health card, but in the US, your registration status is often on your driver's license. And since there is so much more media from the US, this may be confusing to Canadians. So taking into account some of these quotes, we thought about the mode of delivery we could use. We believe that reception staff could prompt patients and provide them with a pamphlet that addresses these knowledge gaps around organ donation. We'll use an iterative process with the research team to link these behavior change techniques to our identified barriers and enablers from the interview. The benefit of doing this entire exercise is that we are very transparent in the methods we use, and if our trial worked or did not work, it would add to the body of work examining which behavior change techniques worked or did not work. So because oftentimes you may read about an intervention and it will be something like, we educated about organ donation and that's it, which doesn't really help you reproduce the findings. So to summarize our intervention, I'm going to use the tidier description. Our trial was titled Registered Now. As for the why, there is a gap between a positive view and motivation to register and actual registration rates. Family physicians are a novel but underused but likely appropriate setting for promoting donor registration. In terms of materials, we had pamphlets that were addressing barriers, iPads in the waiting rooms. For the reception staff, we had scripts for them for how to check the OHIP card and laminated signposts for the iPad. And for family physicians, we provided them a list of suggestions for how to respond to frequently asked questions that patients may have. In terms of the procedures, reception staff in each practice would check the back of the health card for the donor status. They would make a short pitch and provide the pamphlet and point to the iPad, and then patients will then register on the iPad. And we did this intervention in the waiting rooms of 6 family physician offices in southwestern Ontario. The whole trial itself took about 14 weeks overall, and it was delivered to every patient not registered for organ donation. And we suspected that the duration of the intervention for patients were about 2 to 5 minutes, happening only once. We tailored the pamphlets and the iPad to each of the 6 family physician offices. So for the pamphlets, we tailored the family physician offices to include their practice team logo and signature and photo just to make it more personalized. So this was a pragmatic stepped wedge randomized controlled registry trial. So in a standard randomized controlled trial, you would randomize an individual patient to the intervention or the control, and then randomize an adult patient to an intervention or control intervention. However, our trial differed in that we used the stepped wedge design, in which we randomized 6 family physicians to different intervention start dates, sequentially at 2-week periods. I'll be explaining this design in further details over the next few slides. This trial was also a registry trial in which we used ICES data. Ontario has universal health care coverage, and each time a patient visits their family physician will bill their health card for their visit. Therefore, using this, we are able to attribute whether the patient was part of an intervention or control period by looking at physician billings. Based on our previous studies, I adjusted for age, sex, and neighborhood income quintile because these factors are associated with donor registration. Our primary outcome was the prevalence of donor registration at 7 days. We chose 7 days to ensure that patients have the opportunity, should they wish, to discuss their decision to register with their family or friends. We designated prevalence of donor registration rather than the incidence of new registration as the primary outcome for the trial, as it was important to measure the net effect of our cluster level intervention on the overall prevalence of donor registration among all patients with visits to their family physician. We used the mixed effects logistic regression accounting for the stepped wedge design as described by Hooper et al. The model included intervention, status, and time as fixed effects and included a random intercept and slope for time defined at the level of the family physician office. The inclusion of these 2 random effects accounts for within period and between period intra-cluster correlations. So I would like to emphasize the pragmatic nature of this trial. So what this means is that we designed this trial to test if it works under real-world condition rather than as an explanatory trial. Here is the Prezi wheel, which judges the continuum of explanatory pragmatic on 9 domains. So for example, by using billing data, we are able to include all patients that would normally go see their family doctor. so the pragmatism of our eligibility and recruitment domains were high. Also, although we gave a script to reception staff on what to say when they give out the pamphlet, we were flexible and ultimately let the reception staff decide what they want to say. Because we had a research staff provide in-person training to the reception staff, and we gave them lunch and a gift card to participate, which would not be what we would be normally doing if we were to scale this intervention up. We ranked the organization domain a little bit lower. This slide presents an overview of the stepped wedge trial. So first, once we recruited 6 clinics and once we were ready, we had a biostatistician who was blinded to the cluster identity and not involved in the intervention delivery, generate an allocation sequence using random numbers. Each of the 6 participating clinics, which were called clusters, was then randomly allocated to 6 different starting dates for the intervention, which were called steps. I want to also note that myself and the research assistant didn't know the sequence of the clinic. We were only told which site was the first one, and then it would be revealed to us at a later date which site was next. So how the step wedge trial works is that first we had a start date in September. All sites continued their usual practice for 2 weeks. The first site will then start the intervention, and then 2 weeks after, the next site will start, and 2 weeks after that, another one will start, until finally all sites receive the intervention. So a site could be conducting the intervention for as long as 12 weeks, and one site can be as short as 2 weeks. At the end, we then compare the control period with the intervention period. So we wanted to make the training and delivery of the intervention for each site as similar as possible. We didn't reveal the start date of the intervention until 1 month they were supposed to start, and the 2 weeks prior to each practice crossing over to the intervention. We conducted a standard 1-hour in-person training session with the staff. So in other words, each site had the same amount of time of notice and preparation. So to summarize why we chose the stepped wedge trial design, first, the stepped wedge design had the advantage of robustly evaluating the effectiveness of the intervention while also allowing all participating sites to receive the intervention. We adopted this design because we suspected it would be unlikely that family physicians would agree to be randomized unless they were guaranteed at some stage during the trial to receive the intervention. Family physician volunteers recruited to the trial are likely to have a personal connection and interest in organ donation. In a parallel arm design, being allocated to the control arm could have resulted in disappointment and may have prompted physicians to drop out of the study or adopt other interventions to promote organ donation. Stepped wedge trials also tend to have more statistical power than alternative parallel arm designs, and they're also appropriate when they're likely to do more good than harm, as is the certain case with this trial. So here are the baseline characteristics. The groups appear to be mostly balanced, except the mean age of the control patients were a little younger. In total, we gave out 2,250 pamphlets. At the end of the study, we counted how many were left, and there were 1,308. In other words, if we assume that the difference between the number of pamphlets we gave out and the number of pamphlets at the end of the study is equal to the amount that reception staff gave out, then we can say they gave out 942. But of course, since we didn't measure how many they actually gave out, we don't know how accurate this number is. So unfortunately, our trial found that there was no evidence of difference between the groups. In terms of crude percentages, there was a difference of 2% between the control and intervention period. However, after accounting for the study design and pre-specified covariates, there were no difference. So to get a sense of why the trial worked or did not work, we conducted one-to-one semi-structured telephone interviews with the reception staff and physicians to assess their barriers and enablers of delivering the intervention. Keep in mind, we also did this before we had the trial results. I won't be spending too much time on this slide, but I'll highlight the main barriers and enablers. They mentioned that the training session was useful and that they were always eager to participate. However, sometimes the clinic became too busy. They sometimes forgot. Some mentioned that patients don't actually spend too much time in the waiting room, and they also mentioned that they got discouraged by bad experiences, such as whenever someone immediately threw the pamphlet out. I just want to summarize the overall strengths of the study. We were able to link physician visits with the donor database, which made data collection a lot easier. We also used an innovative randomized research design to evaluate our intervention. If we had used a simple pre-post design, then we may have incorrectly concluded that there was an effect. However, with our design, we were able to include almost 25,000 patients, which is much larger than most randomized trials. Overall, this was a large pragmatic trial of nearly 25,000 patients evaluating an intervention implemented in family physician offices. There was no evidence that it increased donor registration. Knowledge users reconsidered plans to invest in promoting donor registration in family physician offices. This was a proof of concept to demonstrate doing more registry-based trials. One deliverable, however, that I am particularly proud of, though, is that the parts of our trial protocol was used to demonstrate good example of scientific reporting and the consort extension for step-to-edge trial in the BMJ. Finally, I would like to add that there's no such thing as failed experiments, only experiments with unexpected outcomes. I was initially disappointed since it took us over 2 years to prepare and conduct the study, but I think we still learned a lot through this experience. So some of the lessons learned was that it was possible to involve reception staff. We learned a lot about the realities that can better shape their support. They only handed out 942 pamphlets out of the 6,000 patients that they could have. iPads are novel, but placement in waiting rooms clearly tells people what they are doing, and thus they're not very private. Patients did not seem to have as much downtime in their waiting rooms as we thought. And finally, the take home is that there is good reason to not throw the baby out with the bathwater and continue to build on what we've learned. Thank you.